national security official who is advising Ukraine while working inside the White House, apparently against the president's interest, and usually they spoke in English. Isn't that kind of an interesting angle on this story?
I find that astounding, and some people might call that espionage.
We also know he was born in the Soviet Union, immigrated with his family, young. He tends to feel simpatico with the Ukraine.
Fox News launched a smear campaign this week, not against its competitors, or House Democratic leadership, or AOC, or even President Barack Obama, but against someone most Americans hadn't heard of until now. His name is Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, a decorated officer in the U.S. Army who was wounded in an IED attack in Iraq and awarded a Purple Heart. He is also a Ukraine expert on the National Security Council, and he listened in on Trump's July 25th phone call with the Ukrainian president. And on Tuesday, he became the first sitting White House official who heard that call to testify in the impeachment inquiry. Testifying for more than 10 hours, Vindman told House investigators, according to the New York Times, that the transcript of the call released by the White House omitted crucial words and phrases, and that Vindman's attempts to include them failed, according to 3 people familiar with the testimony. He also testified in his opening statement that, quote, "I did not think it was proper to demand that a foreign government investigate a U.S. citizen." Before Vindman had even said these words, Fox News' Laura Ingraham and others on Fox moved to discredit Vindman by questioning his loyalty because he was born in Ukraine. It's true, Vindman was born in Ukraine, which was then a Soviet state. He and his family fled to the U.S. as refugees from religious persecution when he was 3 years old. He has served the United States for decades. That does not make him disloyal. That makes him a patriot. Still, early on Tuesday, Trump tweeted a predictable on-brand attack on Vindman, calling him, without evidence, a, quote, never Trumper. Notably, it wasn't just Fox personalities who went after Vindman. On Tuesday, former Wisconsin GOP congressman and current CNN contributor Sean Duffy had this to say hours before Vindman testified.
It seems very clear that he is incredibly concerned about Ukrainian defense. I don't know that he's concerned about American policy, but his main mission was to make sure that the Ukraine got those weapons. I understand that. We all have an affinity to our homeland where we came from.
Joining me now is author and media analyst Eric Boehlert, Kristen Rouse of the NYC Veterans Alliance, Gabriel Sherman, author of The Loudest Voice in the Room, Malcolm Nance, and author of the MSNBC contributor Malcolm Nance, and author of The Plot to Destroy Democracy, and Jennifer Rubin of The Washington Post. This is so shameful and enraging to me that we have an entire network dedicated to not only broadcasting to people who apparently live on Earth too, but who are attacking a member of the military, a veteran, a person who has served this country with distinction and honor and has American interests at heart, first and foremost. And these are from people who have lectured the nation and lectured Democrats for decades about commitment to America, commitment to American national security, and this is what they do. Kristen, let me come to you to get your reaction to what we just heard here from people who supposedly are patriots and care so much about this country, but think nothing of smearing a veteran, smearing a sitting member of the military.
It is so important right now to point out and to remember that foreign-born service members have been absolutely essential to the security of our nation. Essential. Going back to the Revolutionary War, without selfless soldiers and service members like Marquis de Lafayette or Casimir Pulaski or Tadeusz Kościuszko, I mean, heroes of the American Revolution who were born in other countries, who throughout our military history, those who've been born abroad but yet come here and believe in our nation, believe in our values enough to put their lives on the line for it. To question the patriotism or loyalty of a service member who has been born abroad or who has maintained relations with family abroad. That is very troubling, very problematic, and it really reflects an ignorance of history and those who make our military stronger, smarter, and wiser in everything that we do.
And Malcolm, in your role, in the military and intelligence and all the things you've done overseas, you've come into contact with people who might not necessarily be people who were born overseas, came to the United States, become citizens, and then, fight on behalf of this country. You've worked with people overseas who aren't American citizens, but believe in the idea of America to help America in its role as leader of the free world and the bulwark of democracy. How does this attack on Lieutenant Colonel Vindman impact America's ability to maintain its role as a bulwark for democracy?
Well, it simply damages America's image, again, abroad. What you have is a dedicated member of the armed forces who is an American citizen. Just because he was born in another country and came here at age 3, there is no way to question his patriotism. Look, I was born here. I did jobs that were very similar to this, where I had to act as an interpreter of U.S. policy and speak in a foreign language to people who did not understand what we were doing and wanted to assist us. That was his job. But he just did his in the White House. And for them to say, well, because his opinion or what he's saying opposes the President of the United States, that they essentially are calling him a traitor and a spy, that is disgusting and disgraceful. There is a thing called the fighting man's creed, or the fighting person's creed. And it starts with, I am a soldier of the United States Armed Forces. I serve in the forces which protect my nation, and I defend the Constitution of the United States. Apparently, that goes out the window when you're at Fox News. Patriotism to them is patriotism and loyalty to Donald Trump. We are not a dictator. We do not mollycoddle tyrants. The entirety of our Constitution and our revolution was so that we as a body would defend the Constitution and the seat of the presidency, not the person that's sitting in it. And apparently they've completely forgotten about that. Excuse me.
Well, Malcolm, since you brought up Fox, I'll bring in the media analysts who are sitting here at the table. And Gabriel, since you've written the book about these folks over there at that network. Where does this come from? Why are they doing this?
Well, this just clearly shows how boxed into the corner Fox News is and how deep into the cult of Donald Trump they are, because Fox News viewership historically has been very popular with veterans, with members of the military. So the fact that they would launch this base, rank, horrible, disgusting attack on a veteran, possibly alienating part of their audience, they made the calculated choice that backing Donald Trump and smearing this man, this officer, was better for their brand than actually reporting the truth. I just want to say one other thing. The fact that the comment you played on CNN, I feel like that crossed such a line. I say this being Jewish, one of the oldest tropes in anti-Semitism is questioning Jews' dual loyalty to America. Catholics faced this in the 1960s, anti-Catholic bigotry about their loyalty to the Pope. Questioning, what Sean Duffy said on CNN, I'm surprised that CNN hasn't publicly rebuked that. If they have, I missed it. That him questioning the loyalty of someone just because they were born in another country is racism. You're drawing a broad stroke about somebody based on their heritage, and that's wrong. And I think that is no bounds in our political debate.
Great point, Eric.
Well, it's interesting. Fox is playing kind of whack-a-mole, right? If this entire controversy or scandal centered around Vindman and his testimony, I could understand we got to discredit this guy. There's a kaleidoscope of people who have come forward, who have all worked at the administration, who have all told the exact same story. There was bribery, there was quid pro quo. So taking him down isn't going to matter. In a weird way, he's not going to matter in the end. The whistleblower himself or herself is not going to matter in the end. It's going to be the collective. And Fox can't stop a collective, right? This would be like Richard Nixon during Watergate. He says, if I could discredit John Dean, Watergate will go away. Well, no, because there were eyewitnesses, there were tapes, there was transcripts, there were burglars who had to be paid off. So this is for Fox News, this is a very feel-good, short-term strategy. They love smearing people. They love going on the attack. But in the end, it's not going to work because there are so many people telling the same story he is.
Jennifer, you know these folks. You're a conservative. You'll be the first one to tell me if I was wrong in my my interpretation of what Republicans used to stand for, what conservatives used to stand for when it comes to the military and the sanctity of the military. Why on earth is the Republican Party allowing this to happen to a sitting member of the military, to a White House official, to a decorated veteran? I'm old enough to remember when even saying half a phrase of what we've shown in those clips would get someone run out of town.
It was so outrageous that Liz Cheney repudiated it.
I mean,
if you remember, she came forward and she said, we're not going to question people's patriotism. It was so stupid that even Liz Cheney did not want to go down that road. And I think that shows that occasionally Fox gets out over its skis. They think they're brilliant because their nonstop mission in life is to protect Trump, but they don't always think things through. And I think this is a case where they only made it worse. They only called attention to this patriot. The man shows up in his dress uniform with a chest full of medals. They couldn't have picked something stupider to do. So I think part of this is a win at all costs and the lack of discretion, the lack of judgment, because they just talk to themselves. No one ever says, that's a really dumb idea. You don't want to be attacking someone in the military. There are crazies all around them, and they only talk to crazies. So they pump themselves up. They come up with these harebrained ideas, and then when they hit reality and they get whacked in the mouth about it, suddenly they have to scramble for cover. It's interesting. I wrote a piece excoriating John Yoo, who was on that show. He spent the rest of the day pretending he didn't say what he said. So I think it shows that these people really have very little self-control, very little shame, and they occasionally overstep so badly that even the Liz Cheneys of the Republican Party have to tell them to sit down and shut up.
I just want to make one quick point, speaking to Vindman's patriotism. He is actually respecting the co-equal branches of our Constitution by honoring the Congress's impeachment inquiry and going before the House and speaking the truth. The rest of the executive branch is just ignoring that. They are the ones who are being, if you want to question people's patriotism, ignoring our system of checks and balances. So again, this whole smear campaign was just so overblown and wrong on so many levels.
And go ahead.
And no member of the military is acting in isolation. And so there are teams of security and intelligence analysts and lawyers and investigators who have thoroughly vetted somebody in a position such as Colonel Vindman. And there are people who work every single day in the background to make sure that everybody executing our national policy is doing so responsibly and in accordance with, with maintaining continuity and executing the will of our constitutional system.
And Kristen, too, I'm glad you brought that up. It's a perfect segue because I wanted to bring this up, this matter of vetting. Brad Moss sent out a tweet on Vindman's credibility. This was on Tuesday, and Brad Moss is a national security lawyer. He's all about lawful transparency and whistleblower advocate. And as you can see there, says Lieutenant Colonel Vindman was already vetted more than once on these very issues, and the vetting for someone with an intelligence posting would no doubt have required the highest clearance eligibility, top secret / sensitive compartmented information, necessitating not only the standard background check, but also more than likely a full scope polygraph, the one where they grill you on your entire life. Vindman passed this vetting.
And so to call him into question calls into question the entire system protecting us.
Malcolm?
Right. John. Yeah, I'd just like to make one point about Colonel Vindman, and I'd like to address this to all of the intelligence and military watch officers who are sitting around watching the media. We have an obligation to protect the Constitution, and that requires us to tell the truth when we see crimes or potential wrongdoing. Anyone who wears the uniform, who holds a position of trust, who has sworn an oath to the Constitution, must defend the Constitution and no one else.
You know, and there's a tradition here. I mean, John Kerry spent the summer of 2004 being smeared for Swift Boat Veterans for Truth,
which debuted on Fox News.
That's right, and they pumped that for a month. They've gone after John McCain, obviously. But I think it also highlights the desperate situation Fox News is in terms of defending this impeachment, right? You know, with Russiagate, the mantra was no collusion, no collusion. The mantra here is yes, collusion, but maybe it's not so bad. That's a really hard thing to argue 24/7 when Trump has already gone out and admitted basically doing all of these things
several times
and just dropping in a lap of Fox News and saying you figure it out. And so they're stuck with these very short-term smear campaigns. It's not going to matter in a week because there's going to be a treasure trove of damning information against Trump.
Jennifer, I hear you either snickering in the background or trying to get in there.
Listen, I think Democrats have a golden opportunity. They can appeal to all of these ex-Republicans, all of these defunct Republicans, independents, their entire base, and as I think Pete Buttigieg has said, take back the patriotism issue, take back the national security issue. The Republicans have made mincemeat. The reason why Colonel Vindman was so concerned about Ukraine getting weapons is because that was U.S. policy. That was what we wanted them to do. We want them to defend themselves against Russia. So it's, I think, episodes like this that show how really superficial, how phony are the literal flag wavers on the Republican side. And for Democrats, I think they should ram this home again and again. This is not patriotism. This is not respect for the national interest. This is turning a government into a mob and turning it into something that services one individual, does not service America, does not service the Constitution. So I would hope that all of the Democrats realize that they have a golden opportunity and really seize upon this.
Gabriel, there's a reason why I've been harking on Fox News.
Yeah.
Not just because it's a competitor, we'll put that out there, but because there's no denying the fact that in the cable television world, Fox News by far and away is has the biggest audience in cable television, which only to me highlights the danger that they pose. If they are attacking a member of the military, a big chunk of the country is hearing that, and they've been fed. You've written about this. You've been around this table talking about it for years. That they've been feeding a daily diet, hourly diet of rage and hatred and xenophobia and racism to a giant chunk of the country. Just explain to the audience just why the Fox News piece of this is so important.
Well, I think just stepping back to historical context, Roger Ailes, who founded Fox News in 1996, was a Richard Nixon former campaign advisor. He helped Nixon get elected in '68. And Fox News was created precisely because Republicans never wanted Watergate to happen again, that they felt that the media had, railroaded Richard Nixon out of office. So Fox News was going to be the firewall that stood between a Republican impeachment and not. And so that's what Fox News is doing every day, and they're getting more desperate, as Eric pointed out, to be that firewall. But that is what Fox News does, and Donald Trump knows that, and I think that's why you've seen Donald Trump's support amongst the Republican base. The majority of the base gets their news from Fox News to remain, 75, 80, 90% at a time when anyone who reads the newspaper or gets their information from other sources has a very different view of this president.
I want to give Kristen the last word here. Before we do that, I want to play something that Senator Mitt Romney of Utah had to say about all this.
It's absurd, disgusting, and way off the mark. This is a decorated American soldier, and he should be given the respect that his service to our country demands.
Yeah, like how they're using federal prosecutors. Yeah.
Kristen, as a veteran, how does it make you feel, one, to hear Senator Romney say that, but two, to know that Senator Romney is he and Liz Cheney are the only Republicans out there criticizing the attacks on Lieutenant Colonel Vindman?
Well, so many of us, my service spanned 4 different presidents. Many of us have served under more. When members of the military are treated as partisan instruments, it's very problematic because it's not only America who's watching cable news, our military is watching. And to sow dissent in the ranks, to foment suspicion about the patriotism of different kinds of people, it's very troubling for our military to maintain its nonpartisan service to our nation, to protect the Constitution and the system that it builds, and and the continuity of our nation over time. So it's very troubling to see any partisan usage of military in particular. We need to maintain the nonpartisan service aspect of our military.
Kristen, thank you very much for saying that. I can't believe how just emotional I've gotten during this segment, because this is more than attacking a member of the military. This is attacking the very foundation of what makes this country great, but also what makes this country a beacon of hope around the world. So thank you, Gabriel Sherman, Eric Boehlert, Kristen Rouse, and Malcolm Nance.